I have said in a number of different videos that the CFA exam at level 1, level 2, level 3, these are not difficult exams. That if you are prepared, they're not difficult. And if they're not, why do we see these huge failure rates? You have level 1 where you have a pass rate of 43%. That implies a failure rate of 57%. And that is just the people who showed up. Typically on each exam day, there's about 15% of people who do not show up. So if you counted everyone who was registered, the pass rate would be even lower. The biggest reason, by far, for such low pass rates is this is unstructured learning. Through your whole career, you've had structured learning. Grade school, high school, university, you had specific courses where you covered specific content. You had a course outline where week by week you knew exactly what you had to read. You knew exactly when the assignments were, what the assignments covered, how much marks everything were. You knew what you had to do for that course to get to the end ahead of time. You were given a schedule and the class followed that schedule. Well, here you have no schedule. So level 1 has 57, 58 readings, I think, that you have to get through without any structure. Level 2 has 48, and level 3 has 38. And again, all without structure. So you have to develop your own structure. And that can sometimes be difficult because you get the content, you sign up with a provider, and you say, okay, well, I have the readings, I have the videos, there's these blue box examples everyone keeps talking about as being critical, there's the end of chapter questions, I have question banks, I have mock exams. What do I do and when do I do it and what do I use it for? Do I really need to do this if I'm doing that? Should I read the reading first and then watch the video, or watch the video then read the reading? If I understand the video, do I even need to read the reading? Well, without anybody to ask, without that weekly guidance of a schedule in front of you, and without feedback each week of showing up to a class going, oh, no, I see I didn't need to do the reading last week to be just where everyone else is, so I think I can skip the reading. You don't have that kind of feedback when you're doing unstructured learning. You have to figure it out on your own. So I'm going to try to give you some structure in the way that you can think about the different tools you have available for you and what function they serve. So we're going to talk about the reading itself. We're going to talk about the role of the videos, the blue box examples, the end of chapter questions, the review videos, question banks, mock exams, and candidate forums. That is a tool that you have available. Reddit by far is one of the most successful places to be as far as CFA candidates. They have by far the most members, by far. And I don't see a purpose in being in multiple forums at the same time when you could just be at one that has a critical mass of everything. So let's have a look at what our task is. We can break down preparation for any exam into 3 distinct cognitive tasks. The first is learning. Next is reinforcement, and then consolidation. And for each of these tasks, we will use different tools to get there. So when somebody says, when do I use the mock exams? My answer is when you're in the consolidation phase. When do I use your question bank? Well, when you're in the latter part of the reinforcement phase. So depending on where you are, you'll know what you're doing, you'll know what tools to use. When you first approach a reading, well, you don't know anything about the reading. That first phase is learning. And if you sign up with a prep provider, you're going to have videos for every reading. I would start there. I would start with the video and go through the video, because the video really does a lot of heavy lifting for you, at least mine. And I can't speak to everybody's, but I'll speak to the way I do mine. I do it LOS by LOS, and I seek to explain everything, because my theory of teaching, the pedagogy that I follow, is I am not preparing you for an exam. I'm preparing you to be successful in your career. And in doing that, you'll pass the exam. So my bar is not as low as saying, let me just get you through the exam. I'm setting a high bar when I teach. So I explain everything. I try to connect as much as possible to the real world. And anybody who's seen my applied series, where I take content from the readings and I actually apply it in the market, you will see that I'm using the exact words on the pages, the exact things you're learning on these pages applied directly in the market. This isn't an undergrad course where some of the stuff you're learning is theoretical and only the professor finds interesting. Everything on the pages from level 1 to level 3 is real stuff that happens in the real world. This is exactly what you're expected to know. It's operational knowledge, which means that as soon as you learn it, you can put it into use right away. You don't have to figure out, well, how does this work in the real world? How does this theory translate into action? It doesn't work that way. This is real stuff. So the reading video will get you most of the way there. Now, do you then have to go back and read the reading after you've done the video? For level 1 candidates who have a business background, and everyone's in a business background has done a stats course, everyone's had a micro and a macro introductory course, you've all done an introductory accounting course, either a full year course or a 2-semester course, maybe you've even done the intermediates. You probably had either a derivatives or a fixed income course. Maybe you were in a place that had both, a good deep bench, and you've done both. You probably did something with equities and something with portfolio management. So for the most part, you've already seen this if you have a business background. So there's not a lot of value you're going to get by reading all of those words. At level 2, yeah, you're going to see some things that unless you have a master's in finance, you're going to see some new things that you haven't seen in your undergrad. If the video is enough where you can get to the end of chapter questions in the question bank and you're doing just fine, then you probably don't need to read. You've picked it up quite well. However, I do find that a slow reading, after I understand everything in the reading, a slow reading of the words actually helps with reinforcement. So you can choose if you find value in the reading on your own. Level 1, not necessary. Level 3, probably necessary because there's a lot of detail in those readings in level 3 and a lot of nuance sometimes that's difficult to capture in a video. So at level 3, I would say you're more apt to want to read some of the readings, maybe not all, but some of them. At level 1, if you have my videos, and I've had a lot of feedback on candidates who said, I never read a single page, and they've gone on to complete level 2 and level 3 and moved on. If you have a business background, then for undergrad, then yeah, you could probably skip that. So there you go. You have the videos, and the blue box examples begin the application process, the applying of the learning that you're doing. And it also helps with the reinforcement as well, which is why I sort of have them overlap. Now, why do I not have a straight line across here? Is because in my video, I do cover some of the blue box examples. I do walkthroughs of some of the blue box examples. For some readings, I do walkthroughs of all of them because they're critical. For others, I do walkthroughs of good examples, and I leave the others for you. I don't have to cover every single example. Once you're through the learning process and you want to apply that, then you head to reinforcement. And the goal here is you're still learning, but you're applying some of what you've learned to these questions, which helps reinforce what you've learned. Don't think of the end of chapter questions as testing your ability. Don't think of question banks as testing your ability. These are here to help you develop your knowledge, to reinforce what you already know, which is why it's called formative assessment. Formative meaning that you're still forming your knowledge. Question I get asked quite a bit from our question bank is this the type of question I can expect to see on an exam? No. Sometimes yes, very close to this, but for a lot of the questions in the question bank, not really, because the question bank will go a little deeper than it should. The questions will be a little longer than necessary, or that you would expect on an exam, especially at level 1, and sometimes require 3-4 minutes to solve, while level 1 is an average of 90 seconds. So no, it's not what you would expect to see on an exam. But in doing the question bank questions, when you get to the exam questions, they should be much easier for you. That's what formative assessment should do, is it should push you more than what you would expect on the assessment. It should not be easy with the final exam really hard. The work along the way should be hard with the final exam appearing to be easy because you've been very well prepared. So that's when you would use the question bank, is when you're ready to reinforce what you've learned. This is the application of what you've learned. So also for learning and reinforcement, you have a tool called the Candidate Forum. And under every video on our site, every reading video and every end of chapter question video, we have a candidate forum where candidates post questions for clarification. I'm active in the forums. I try to answer as many as I can, but I do leave quite a bit for other candidates to answer because that's part of the reinforcement process. So you can learn a lot by reading the comments and the answers in the forum section. And once you develop your skill in a particular reading, you may see a comment left by a candidate, and you may say, I know the answer to that. answering those questions will really help with the reinforcement. You will never learn more about something than when you teach it to somebody else, because you have to be correct. So as you write out each sentence, you're going to say, well, let me make sure that I said that right. Is that the right answer? And you'll find yourself working a little bit harder when you help somebody out, because you want to make sure that you get it right. So contribute to forums and consume the forums. By consumption, I mean go ahead and read them, and then produce content for the forums as well. And that will help with the reinforcement. Once you get through a reading, once you feel that, well, I've got this down, you move on to the next reading, but you're going to have to revisit this reading to consolidate, and consolidation happens with repetition. For that, I have particular videos that are done, which are review videos, and these typically will take anywhere from 10 minutes, sometimes to as much as 30 minutes, to review the videos, which can be anywhere from 1 hour. Some of the longer ones are 3 hours. And I try to condense just the main themes. So there's no learning. I don't attempt to teach in the reviews. I just remind you of what you should know. So you'd want to cycle through those on a regular basis. Well, that's the consolidation phase. Hearing it again and again and again cements it into your mind, repetition. In the final phase before the exam, and I say roughly about 4 weeks, that's when you're going to want to do reviews. That's where you hit the mock exams, not before. The mock exams are designed to mock what the exam is going to be, well, which is why they're called mock exams. They are not there to help you learn. They are there, and they are designed purely to test your knowledge at this point. So they do not attempt, or at least I don't write questions that attempt to teach you anything here. So all the questions on the mock exams are written such that they can be answered in the time allotted, nothing more. So they have to be written very tightly and very consistently. So this is called summative assessment, and it's there to test your knowledge. You don't want to be testing your knowledge in this stage over here, in the reinforcement stage, because it can be demoralizing. You might only get 50%, 60% right, and you say, I'm not getting it. Well, because you're confusing reinforcement with consolidation. In the reinforcement phase, you're still learning. You're reinforcing what you know. Only after a period of consolidation, that means repetition, are you ready to actually assess your knowledge. You're just assessing your knowledge too early and getting sort of demotivated. So you want to save those mock exams to the very end. Now, for question banks and mock exams, you can find that on our site. Level 1, Level 2, Level 3, we have very comprehensive question banks. I add to them all the time. So over the course of a month, I may add 50 to 100 questions at each of the 3 levels. For the past year, we've really increased our level 3 and our level 2, and replacing a lot at level 1 because they were written by outside writers, and I'm replacing everything with my own content. Also on the CFAA website, under candidate resources at all 3 levels, you have a question bank and you have mock exams as well. On our site, we typically release the mock exams anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks before the exam date, because you should not be using those until you are ready to be tested, because they can be demotivating. So if we think about how we approach each particular reading, you'll spend the majority of the early part learning, a little bit reinforcing. As time goes on, as you're an hour in, 2 hours in, 3 hours in, that back end time, the majority of it should be spent reinforcing what you're learning. And then, of course, you're going to combine that with consolidation over time. You can't do a reading the first week of January, and then never revisit it again till the first week of April. Every couple of weeks, you should set aside a weekend where you say, all I'm going to do is cycle through these review videos, and I'm going to keep working on this consolidation phase for the things that I've already learned. So there we are. I hope that helps. I've also tried to break it down here for learning. You're going to use the video, the reading itself, the blue box examples, and read the forums. For reinforcement, you'll work through some of the blue box examples that are not in the videos. You'll attempt the end of chapter questions, and there's video walkthroughs for all of those as well. You'll hit the question banks, and you'll try to contribute to the forums by answering other candidates' questions within the forums. And then you have your review. 4 weeks minimum. Level 1, I'd say 4 weeks. Once you get to level 3, I think that would be too light. I think you'd want to go 6 weeks for review, maybe even up to 8 weeks for review at level 3, because that AM session does require a little bit of rethinking about how you answer questions. And here, for the review process, it's really heavy on mock exams and review videos. You're done with the question banks at this point. You're done with the end of chapter questions. You're done with the readings and the videos. You're really focusing on consolidating everything you know at that point. There we are.